This crowd rises to its feet. Vaccaro slammed it home. Garland left wing, 3-ball. Perfect! Garland went to the lane, lobbed to Mobley. Pow! And Allen blocked the shot at the rim. Pow! With the left hand and a foul.
Welcome to the Chase Down Podcast, part of the Cavs media family. I'm your host, Justin Rowan. The Chase Down is presented by fubo, the official streaming partner of the Cavs. Watch over 350 channels of live sports and TV, including FanDuel Sports Network without cable. There's no cost and no commitment. Try for free at FuboTV.com/Cavs. Well, last night's game against the Orlando Magic looked nothing like the playoff series we had last season. The Cavs were dominant from start to finish. The starters got to rest early. It was another fun night to be a fan of the Cleveland Cavaliers, who are now one win shy of last year's win total. Joining me today is my co-host, Carter Rodriguez. Carter, how you doing, buddy?
I'm doing well, and they matched last year's win total, brother. They won 48 last year.
I thought it was 49.
Well, some would argue it should have been, but it wasn't. Yeah. And yeah, they have indeed matched, and they're half a game off from what their win total ended at. But I got to tell you, buddy, I'm not in a basketball mood because I just got finished putting my kids to bed, and my daughter is reading her first ever real chapter book, right? It's a big moment, and it's a mystery. And we've been just ramping up every chapter. And we get to the end, and they don't solve the mystery. And she was pissed. And I'm trying to explain to her how this ambiguous ass ending for this kid's mystery book. I'm like, what are we doing?
Now, is this a cliffhanger, or is this just how it's being left?
No, they just literally just don't solve it. And that's the end of the book. They end up just deciding to play something else instead of playing detective. And Millie was like, well, I wanted to know what happened. And I was like, I don't know, man. I'm sorry.
This is just preparing her for watching The Sopranos, which, I think we can figure out what happened in The Sopranos. If anyone wants to get after me with that, I have strong opinions on what happened and why.
I get it for adult media, but what are we doing?
You got to work them in. You have to, start introducing it slowly,
And the deep end, right? I'm unsatisfied. I wanted to know who was tying that rope all through the neighborhood. It was not a very compelling mystery, but still, for a kid, it was pretty compelling.
Okay, so the game last night wasn't very compelling. The Cavs completely smoked the Orlando Magic. Because of that, I want to ask you, what was your first disappointment you really remember with media, whether it be a movie or a book?
Oh, man, that's a really good question. I don't know.
I remember the first time I realized a movie could suck. I went to the theater and I saw Master of Disguise. It was my first time ever being disappointed with a movie.
I was so easy, I remember I asked my dad once, what's the worst thing I ever made you take me to? And he said, Spy Kids. He hated Spy Kids.
That's fair. That's fair. I love that.
I did too as a kid. I was easy to please as a kid, so I can't remember. I was definitely older, I feel, than others. But Master of Disguise truly was an awful movie.
Just truly awful, and a really fun fact that exists there, and I'm pretty sure everyone knows it. The Cavs were easy on the eyes, though. It was not disappointing. It was a fun performance against the Orlando Magic. Obviously, Orlando missing some key players. Jalen Suggs, his absence has really been felt by them. But they did have Paolo Banchero, Franz Wagner, Wendell Carter Jr. called it a must-win game for them. And, you were expecting Orlando to put forward their best shot, right? I think we talked about this coming out of the All-Star break, that there's going to be teams looking to set the tone heading for the postseason. The Cavs are going to be that litmus test team for so many opponents. And for Cleveland to come out, have, a start to the game where neither team was really hitting a ton of shots, but just kind of keep going at it, getting quality looks against Orlando. And eventually, once those floodgates open, DeAndre Hunter helped kick those in, by the way. But once they opened up, they just didn't close for the rest of the evening.
Kind of felt like Hunter's first, marquee moment with the team. He had a couple big threes in other games, but it was he took, I felt like that was the line of demarcation for the game, where it was this is close, this is close, this is close. let me hit 3 straight threes and open this game up in a way that Orlando never kind of regained contact.
Yeah, it really was. And, Max Strus got them going early. I said in our game threads in the Discord that, hey, when Strus hits his first one, he's probably going to heat up, and he did. Really nice shooting night from him. And, it's funny to look back and reflect on last year's series against Orlando, because obviously how you play, like when you play a team during the season matters a lot, right? Teams naturally go through ebbs and flows. They have peaks and valleys. So you can't look at this win over Orlando and say, yeah, that's last year's team. They're playing well. They're not playing well. Like you can't take too much away from it. But I still couldn't help but feel how stark the contrast was from last year, where last year Donovan Mitchell playing through an injury was everything. Like he was the one that needed to get everything going offensively. If it wasn't him scoring, they just struggled to generate consistent offense. Darius wasn't contributing how he wanted to at that
Jarrett
point.
Was gone.
Like just up and down the roster, they had so much trouble generating offense against this defense. And for all of Orlando's struggles, they are still the number 2 defense in the league. So on a night where Donovan only gets 11 and 5, and not because, he's shooting poorly and they're locking him up or anything like that, he just didn't need to generate offense in that way. But for a night where he contributed so little from a box score perspective, no Darius in the lineup, for them to score as comfortably as they did against this good of a defense, I think it just goes to show you how the evolution of this team has really taken place, where there is so much depth and there is so many guys that can contribute in a variety of ways.
Yeah, I mean, he wasn't really even playmaking that much. He led the team in assists.
11 and 5.
But like at the end of the day, like I just felt like they were running their stuff, and their stuff was yielding really, really good looks. And Strus was phenomenal. Absolutely phenomenal. I thought one of his best games of the year, especially as a shooter. And, between Strus, Hunter, and Jerome, plus just a dash of Isaac Okoro, like you got all the scoring you needed for the entire game. And, those 4 or 5 guys are really all you needed. And that's not including, Jarrett or Evan, who had 17 on 9 shots. It was a real testament to the depth of the roster, a real testament to in a way, it's kind of about what this week has been about. You go up against the Knicks and you go, oh, we ain't the same team anymore. Yeah. We can kill you in 100 different ways. Thank you very much. And then you go against the Magic and you say, oh, we ain't the same team. You ain't either, but we definitely have gone up several notches. So if you were hoping tonight was a night to prove that you were, what you were last year, you're sorely mistaken. I mean, how many crises of confidence have the Cavs caused this year, by the way? It's just that's been their hallmark trait is sending teams into absolute shambles. And then, you look towards Friday and the same thing presents. Are you ready to prove to Boston that you ain't the same team that is 1-2 against them in the regular season, that lost 4-1 in the playoffs last year, that has struggled to get your offense going this year? The only team really they've struggled against to get their offense going. And it's such an opportunity in front of them, and such a reflection of the fact that they are different. They are meaningfully better. They are growing and getting stronger and stronger every, month by month.
Mm-hmm. It's what I find really interesting, right? Like Matt Moore had a conversation about how he firmly believes that there's such thing in the regular season as peaking too early, right? And I think that there is something to that. My argument would be, at least when it comes to the Cleveland Cavaliers, you cannot make an argument that they've peaked in the regular season, because when your starters aren't playing more than 30 minutes and you're experimenting and you're giving guys run, I understand the net team results have been phenomenal, but you're not throwing your fastball. You're not doing that on a consistent basis. So unless you're artificially like trying to hold down the success of guys like a DeAndre Hunter or Ty Jerome so that the net rating doesn't spike too soon, like you can't make an argument that they're peaking too early. And I really, really find it interesting because on the way up throughout this kind of team building process with the Cavs, we kept looking at markers around the NBA, right? Like you're always going to think you're special because that's just human nature. You're always going to think you're the main character of the universe. That's just the way that it is. So you think that your guys are going to achieve their ceiling and you're going to reach these heights. But when we were interviewing people from Orlando and Atlanta and Toronto and all these other young teams that were on the rise, it was an open question of which of these kind of young cores was going to take that step forward, right? There was debate around the draft of Evan Mobley or Jalen Suggs. And, when Mobley was picked, people said, hey, we're going to see what happens in a few years. It's going to be interesting to track these two teams. And, I think once again, Evan Mobley had a phenomenal performance. He's been a big part of this team's success. I think we've won in his career at a 54-win pace when Evan Mobley's in the lineup. So, like, obviously he's a big part of it, but it's just amazing to me that this Cavs team has really put themselves forward in comparison to teams like Orlando, and not to mention the other teams that we interviewed like Atlanta and Toronto and some of the other young cores that we thought might be growing alongside the Cavs.
And bro, this is where I just keep going back to the fact that they made the right choices on the road. They didn't miss. They didn't bail on anyone too early. They didn't hang on to anyone too long. Really, with the only exception you could really make is the JB argument. But at the end of the day, like that, their roster construction has held firm, and
I still fundamentally believe that giving him another year was the right call. Like
but certainly I felt like it was a defensible call, and one I think both of us wanted them to make. So we certainly aren't going to play. Hindsight is 2020 here. But they've just made the right calls, and I forget who it was. It was either S or Matt Moore that was like, man, I just feel so bad for the Kings. They had 1 year of being fun and on the rise, and now everything's kind of a mess again. And that just kind of goes to like making the right calls, investing in the right players, getting lucky in the right ways. Like I tweeted during last night's game, with 4 minutes and 17 seconds left in Game 7 of the first round against the Magic, the Cavs were down 18 points. And sure, you can credit organizational philosophy and fortitude, but also how much credit do you have to give to the players for gritting up, making that comeback? Thank you, Donovan, for going absolutely ballistic in the second half of that game and getting us to the second round, because I don't know if any of this happens. The whole math changes if you lose again to a less talented, more physical team in the first round. And so some of this stuff does just exist on a knife's edge at the end of the day. And I just keep going back to the word grateful for the season they're having, because there's a trillion roads, a trillion outcomes. Not to go, full Doctor Strange on you, but there's a lot of outcomes where this isn't happening. So the fact that we're in the timeline that it is, I'm very happy.
Yeah, well, I think, as you corrected me, that we have already matched last year's win total, and we've exceeded our Vegas over-under for the season, at least the initial line already. I think it's a good time to kind of reflect on that, because let's be honest, 48 wins is a pretty successful season. That's better than a lot of teams get to. I forget how long it's been since the Washington Wizards have had a 50-win season, but a lot of fan bases don't get up to 48, right? There were so many years that we've been podcasting and covering this team where just getting to 500 seemed like a tall kind of hill to climb. And we're just reflecting on last year of everything that the team went through and just how difficult some of those stretches were. This rocks, man. This has been a lot of fun. And I think it's a big part of why, at least for myself, I've always tried to compartmentalize both the regular season and the playoffs. I can have an eye towards the postseason and kind of view it as a separate entity that we're working towards, while still really enjoying the fact that for 82 nights, I get to live and die with my team. I get to talk about it with other Cavs fans. I get to talk about it with you. Like, to me, that this is just such a big, important part of the fan experience. And as much as like my sights are 100% on what this team could accomplish this season, and I'm like insanely excited about the opportunity for this team to potentially win a championship this year, like I'm thoroughly enjoying the ride. And I don't think how I look back on this season is going to be impacted a whole lot by the postseason, at least when it comes to like regular season fondness. Of course, if they underachieve in the postseason, that's going to put a sour taste in your mouth. But like, this has just been such a fun run. And when you have this kind of well-founded hope, like, it's not a long shot that this team can contend. They are a contender.
By the way,
it's a really special spot to be in.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. And by the way, isn't it so interesting that Orlando is just basically on our curve right now? You know, they have the come up. They address some roster, some immediate roster concerns, and they have a year where everything goes wrong. And like, I'll be interested to see what lessons they take away in their front office, which I think has built a very good team. Because I feel like they're going to have to make some hard calls at the end of this year where they go, okay, is it that our roster is incompatible? Is there not enough shooting in the Franz Paolo duo and not enough like playmaking to like build a good offense? Or are we just having a bad year? Are we just having a rough year?
Cap space. I'm really happy they had cap space last offseason and signed KCP instead of this, because they might throw a max contract at Ty Jerome after what he did to them.
Yes, you're not wrong about that. So, it is just interesting to see all these teams kind of ebb and flow and figure out how they're going to deal with the kind of, because like when you're in it last year, you're forgiven for being woe is me, right? Of like, oh man, can we just catch a break? Like, oh, this is going to mess up our whole team building process. And, maybe our guys are just injury prone, and you're having all these kind of thoughts in your head. And then at the end of the day, it's like you look at Orlando, who are, generally sturdy as hell. Like, they were really, really healthy all last year, and they're having the year from hell this year. And sometimes you just have to remember, I almost want to like go counsel their front office and be like, chill guys. Like, you have a really good team. It's just been a weird year for you.
Yeah, and I would advise fans not to write them off. Like, I think that's a team that's going to hang around. I wouldn't be surprised to see them give a team hell in the postseason. I think that they are going to have longevity. I think that's a team that's going to be someone that we're going to have to, measure ourselves against still in the future in the Eastern Conference, and is going to be coming for the Cavs. But I really think, kind of that key takeaway of, we have so many more guys that can contribute, that can initiate offense, that can finish plays offensively. That's one of the biggest differences, because getting another good offensive performance against an elite defense, that's an important thing for us to see. The Cavs still have the number one offense in the league when it comes to how they play against top 10 defenses. They have a 121 offensive rating in those games. The next closest is the Knicks, and they're almost 2 points worse. That's a pretty big gap when you're talking about how you perform against the best teams. But you brought this up to me recently in a conversation, and it's something that I've been meaning to touch on, is back in 22-23 when the Cavs lost to the Knicks, they had the number one offense against top 10 defenses in the league. That was something that was true back then. It wasn't just that they were beating up on the worst teams in the league. And I think, we did a good job in the lead up to that series of highlighting, hey, there's been some struggles against the Knicks. Even though overall the Cavs have quality wins, they have the 24th best offense against the Knicks. Well, like, when you look at how teams perform, they struggle on that end. They really struggle to end possessions with defensive rebounds, even though their overall defense is good. And all of that remained true when you get to the playoffs. But the thing that jumps out to me is when you just look at the depth of that team. And I think that was why, coming out of that series where we were saying, just got to improve the supporting cast. Like the core needs to be better. We know Evan needs to take a step forward. We know Darius, Donovan, Jared all need to be better. But a lot of this is the supporting cast. Because when the core four played with Isaac Okoro in that series, they had a plus 13 net rating. When they played with Karras, they had a plus 4 net rating. But when you look at the minutes leaders outside of that, it was Karras, then it was Jetty, then it was Okoro, Danny Green, and Ricky Rubio. We are in a much different scenario this season. And that goes beyond just, recognizing how much better every member of the core four is now than they were back then.
Well, that really does set up my point that the Cavs we've talked a lot about the Cavs' depth. We've talked a lot about 48 minutes of hell, about them not having to play any lineups that just kill them. And no one else gets to do that, really. And I went ahead and just looked at their 25 most played 5-man lineups this year.
Mm-hmm.
Only 6 of those 25. And by the way, like the 25th is like they've played 30 minutes together. So this is like, some of these lineups have barely played, even down at the bottom. So it certainly is top heavy. And only of the top 25, only 6 of them have a negative net rating, and only one of them does not feature players who are no longer on this team.
Mm-hmm.
And that one lineup is like the 8th most played lineup, and it's like -2. It's not like they don't have any like, well, we play this at 4 to 5 minutes every game, and it always gets shellacked. Like they don't have that. Every single lineup they play is consistently good against every opponent, and that is such strength. And that's not strength at the bottom of your roster in terms of your depth. While I think the Cavs have that, I think the fact that their the middle class of their roster works so well in so many different ways with the upper class of its roster that you just don't play. There's no lineups that can't succeed. And that stuff bodes so well, given that the core four in the playoffs has always performed well. That's not to say they've always performed well on offense, which will remain my angst. I was really hoping that when you mentioned me looking up their offensive rating 2 years ago against top teams, I was almost hoping it was bad, so we could be like, well, look at it now. So, at the end of the day, we're not gonna find the silver bullet that makes us feel like the offense is gonna still put up 120 per 100 possessions in the postseason, but so we have to find all these other anecdotal things to try to piece together the case for why it will be different this time.
Yeah, and that's why, we've consistently said, even though we both firmly believe that this team is a contender, we've said that there is nothing that can happen in the regular season at this point. Even if we went out and we blew Boston out by 40 on Friday in Boston, there's nothing that's going to make you say, okay, the Cavs should be the favorite in this series. I firmly believe that they can win that series, but you're going to give that nod to the team with experience. You are going to need to see the Cavs offense translate to the postseason. You're going to need to see these guys step up. And I think, the important distinction in what you're saying about how we haven't seen the core not work in the playoffs is we've seen them individually struggle, but even through their struggles, even, Mobley averaging or scoring 1 point as a role man in the entire Knicks series. Darius, a shell of himself last postseason. Despite all of that, positive net rating against the Knicks, positive net rating against Boston, even with no Jared Allen there, right? Like, it still has worked, and there was room for growth with them. But so frequently the question has been, okay, is there enough from a supporting cast standpoint? Is this going to translate? Can our stars be stars in the series? And that's going to be the biggest question, right? Like when we talk about looking forward to Friday and whatnot, you want to have some film of Evan Mobley having success offensively. I'm going to want to see Darius play well. And, if they don't, that's going to be a question heading into the series. It's going to be a question even if it goes well. But if they don't, it's okay. Like, this is going to be something where we're going to see what they can do to close that gap between now and late May.
Yeah, it's I'm pretty hyped for this Celtics game, Justin. I think it's important. I don't know how many important like quote capital I important games the Cavs have left in the regular season. Is this
I think
by
it's
far?
this.
Is this the most? Is this the only one left in terms
Yeah.
of like?
We don't play OKC again. Like, I don't think that there's a whole lot that can happen in the 2 remaining games against the Knicks that would make me feel different about those series. Like, barring injury, I feel pretty confident about what the Cavs are capable of doing. If they came out and laid an egg, that could happen. But my feelings on that series and that matchup are not going to change. And even though that is true against Boston, I still want to see success there. I want to continue to learn more about that individual matchup. I want to see does Evan Mobley have a different approach, even if, let's say, he misses some of those kind of in between shots. Let's say, okay, he's just attacking Porzingis a little differently than he did in the last matchup. He looks a little more under control, and the jumper didn't fall. Like, that kind of stuff to me would be really, really interesting. That's the kind of stuff that I'm really looking forward to in that game. And I'm also really interested, assuming Darius Garland plays, which I forget who reported it, but apparently he was a full participant in practice prior to the Magic game.
It was Spears.
I think you're correct there.
I think it was him because he's an unusual Cavs report guy.
Yeah, I think you're correct there. So full participant, 2 days off before this game in Boston. The first thing that I'm really looking forward to is how deep does Kenny go with everybody available versus Boston? We know kind of in our mind who we think the top 9 is going to be. Is that actually going to occur? Are the core going to play really well against them with Max Strus again? Like that worked really well in the last game, but it's a small sample size. Like, all these kind of little things that I want to learn about the matchup. I hate that we have to wait until matchup 4 to see the team fully healthy against Boston and kind of get an idea for how Kenny's going to deploy them. But I'm really interested to kind of keep an eye on that in that game.
Yeah. And by the way, do we know their top 9? Do we, Justin?
I said we have an idea in our head of who we think the top 9 should be, but I still think Kenny's going 10 in this game. Like, I don't think he's going to trim it down to 9, but I think we know who the top 10 at least is going to be.
Yes, I think that's certainly fair. And that's what I'm actually most interested to see is, will he trim it down? Mm-hmm. This is a tough matchup for Sam Merrill. They switch like crazy. They don't give him any airspace. They attack him on the other end of the floor. Like, does he just go, hey, we're bigger. We have the ability to play bigger lineups than we did last time around. We're not starting him at small forward like we did in one of these matchups. We have the tools to play the way we want to play without giving up all this size in this particular matchup. Because I do think there are matchups where Sam is going to be super valuable, super helpful in terms of just, using his gravity to destabilize the defense, and places where maybe you can hide him a little easier, either in a zone or, or just in your switching scheme. But
yep.
I'm interested to see, how bad does Kenny want to win this? And will he, challenge some of his own principles on the road to doing so?
Mm-hmm. I expect Sam to play. I think Sam's been playing very well defensively.
He's playing unbelievably well, just period, right now.
I think that he's probably going to go 10, but just how he uses these guys, who he pairs them with, right? I think probably it goes to show you just how deep this team is on the defensive end of the floor. But our worst defender might be Ty Jerome. And even he's got active hands and can be, an event defender at times. I'm interested to see kind of what combinations Kenny uses and kind of what pairings he feels helps him do his best work. Just like Zoom AI Companion helps us do our best work, Carter, because only you can do your best work. Zoom AI Companion can help you do the rest, like automatically taking notes, answering meeting questions, and helping you respond to your coworker. Available at no additional cost with eligible pay plans. Work happy with Zoom AI Companion. I am really excited for this game, man. I hope, obviously that Darius is going to be available. I hope everyone from Boston is. I saw Porzingis was dealing with a bit of a flu, and Brown was dealing with some knee soreness.
Yeah, Brown is not playing against Detroit tonight. They're down by 16 in the fourth in Detroit as they go for their 8th straight win, which how about JB Bickerstaff got to give him a lot of love there. I have a rotational question for you, brother man.
Okay.
So I know you have been on team start DeAndre Hunter. As you know, I'm on team start Max Strus.
Yep.
Though I think you've made some very compelling arguments. Does watching some of these games play out over the last couple days, the Memphis game, I think in particular, really flew out at me, where the ability with Hunter off the bench just to put him in any combination so easily, being able to say, okay, we're actually going to have you come get Mobley to start, and we're going to play, Okoro, Strus, Hunter on the wings, or have him come in with Dean, and then you play him at the 3, and maybe shift Strus down to the 2. It's felt really easy for Kenny to land with massive lineups that feel really, really good against other teams' second units, which I knew theoretically, which is part of the reason I liked it, but has the feel of it changed your opinion at all?
No, I think I've been completely validated in my take, which is that I was totally fine with Max Strus starting. I think that's a terrific lineup. It's been great this year, but my entire point was, if DeAndre Hunter is not starting, he is not going to get minutes with the core 4 because teams can't keep it competitive long enough against the Cavs. The way that Kenny goes deep in his rotation is going to make it so that he's not going to get those opportunities. And he has not played a minute with the core since his last start with the core, which I believe was his first game with the Cleveland Cavaliers. So I really I'm totally fine with starting Max. I'm fine with starting Max going into the playoffs. I just think that DeAndre Hunter is a potential closing lineup with those guys. When you look at how the core with DeAndre Hunter lines up against the Boston Celtics, that's a spot where the Cavs have more length at almost every position on the court. Donovan Mitchell is a longer player than Derek White. DeAndre Hunter is longer than Jaylen Brown. Evan Mobley is longer than Jason Tatum. Porzingis and Jared Allen, Porzingis has an edge there, but it's at least throughout the guts of both of those lineups, the Cavs have a length advantage, and I just don't think that is something that you are going to frequently have. And as much as people have those conversations on the defensive end, I think with what Boston does from a scrambling offense standpoint, from an ability to make it harder for them to really take away the guards, having that long-rangey shooter that is comfortable rising up over defenders is almost as important, not as from a play initiation standpoint, but I think from a keeping the defense honest standpoint, I think that's almost as important as Evan Mobley as a front court hub.
I hear you. And I think all of this is good. And this, I think, makes it such a good argument, because I really do think I don't know if there's an objectively right side to it. Because where I kind of go is, yeah, maybe he's not going to get a tremendous amount of minutes with the core 4. And that does seem to be seems a little scary, but he's going to get a ton of minutes with 3 of them at a time.
Yeah.
At the end of the day.
The whole of my argument. No, you're correct in pointing that out. And the other counter to that is DeAndre Hunter, since he's joined the Cavs, has looked like a seamless fit no matter what the lineup is. He just knows how to play off of guys. It's not like he needs to get some feel for, where does Donovan like to get this kind of pass? You know what DeAndre ain't here for? Passing. He's there to finish plays, get stops, be active.
This is I think the crux of it,
he's there to finish plays. I understand your point.
I think his job is simple enough in both contexts, compared to others. It's funny, the people, if I'm Kenny, what I'm most interested in is him playing with the 2 bigs at the same time, because that's the hardest thing to do for them if he doesn't start, because those guys really mostly start the first quarter, start the third quarter, and close the game.
Yep.
So even though I think he's going to get plenty of time with Darius and Donovan at the same time, and even if it's just one of them, I don't think the Cavs meaningfully change the way they play that much. when Ty comes out there. Like, I think they're pretty much playing the same style of ball. So, like, while there's something to be said about, like, playing with a guy and knowing his idiosyncrasies up close, like, I don't think stylistically his job changes that much. I do think his job changes a little bit with Mobley and Allen together. You know, he goes from being a small ball 4 or, you know, being a very switchy 3 next to Dean Wade in those lineups to, like, oh, I need to go be like a bulldog at the point of attack, and I need to play defensively differently, and offensively, I need to occupy different parts of the floor to make sure I'm appropriate, because your space, it just becomes more crucial to space appropriately when you have less shooting on the floor. So that is the one caveat that I would say is, if I'm Kenny, I am trying, I would like to tweak things just a little bit to get him time with the 2 bigs. But again, I don't think he has to start to do that. But going back to your point, if he's not going to tweak things, then maybe he should start. I don't know, man. It's a tough question to solve for. And
honestly, I completely agree with you. I think that as a front court trio is more important than playing with the guards. Like Darius and Donovan, they're going to figure it out. I like their job initiating the offense isn't going to be that different. I still like I do believe that DeAndre Hunter in that spot at small forward alongside the 2 bigs, it's going to be a pretty easy role for him, right? Like just because it's 2 bigs, the way that they play is very similar to how they play even when they are going 4 out, right? Because you're going to see, you know, Jared Allen and Evan Mobley up at the 3-point line, even when they're both there, right? Like just from a screening standpoint and just the variety of offense they run, the spacing is there because you have to account for them defensively as a screener. You can't just say, oh, you know, it's Jared Allen setting the screen, I can sit back in the paint. No, Donovan and Darius are going to kill you. The second and third actions here are going to kill you. So you're going to have spacing from that standpoint. But I just want to get the reps in, man. Like even going into this game, I'm a little uncomfortable that if they do play minutes together, it's the first time they play together since they played the Toronto Raptors, and the Boston Celtics are not the Toronto Raptors. Like I want to see it. I want to see it.
I think really what it comes down to is I'm not worried about the starters against Boston. I'm worried about second units. I think our starters can and should be able to hang with their starters who don't even have a positive net rating on the season. Shouts to you for that stat.
Unbelievable.
So like where we've lost is in those second quarters where they make a run and we've got, you know, Darius or Donovan getting caught on Kristaps' hip and George Niang trying to protect the rim while Evan is guarding Derek White on the other side of the floor because you can't leave him. That's the stuff that kills us. That's the stuff that killed us last year. And until I'm proven that that's not what kills us, I'm going to roll with the thing that has empirically made this matchup hard for us.
Yeah, and, you know, one game where Max started against Boston, they had a plus 19 net rating. If you look at, so take that first matchup against Boston where Sam Merrill was starting at the 3 and Ty Jerome played a bunch of 3 and we didn't have a single wing available. If you look at the 2 kind of subsequent games, core 4 when they're on the court, no matter who they were with, had a 101 defensive rating. That's going to hold. How we play against them defensively, I'm interested to see how it changes now that when we go to these, you know, second unit lineups, you're able to have Dean Wade out there. This is going to be the first time that he's played against Boston this season. You're going to have DeAndre Hunter out there. You're going to have more length than you had in the past. But
it's not
even with that length, I'm not interested in changing up the scheme of how we played against them. I'm okay with, you know, them continuing even with the length. If they want to take Jason Tatum mid-range jumpers against Darius Garland, he can take 19 of those for all I care. Like, even if he hit 60% of them in this game, I am going to live with that trade-off. And that would be an outlier because he is a bad mid-range shooter. He is like a 30th percentile mid-range shooter, and he is shooting terribly versus Darius this season.
Here's where the length helps. It's not that it allows you to execute the scheme you already have better, because Darius is still going to get caught on Tatum. And every now and again, Tatum's going to beat Darius, and you're going to need to help. Okay, that's fine. And every now and again, Darius or Donovan is going to get caught on Porzingis on the nail, which is the scariest. I think that's the number one thing that has made the Cavs look like crap against Boston, is when one of the guards gets caught with Porzingis on the nail. He can throw it anywhere. All of his passing lanes and angles are super easy. He attacks. They have to put 2 on the ball. Game blouses. That is the worst thing that happens against the Celtics for this Cavs team and this Cavs scheme. However, what this length allows you to do is tag people the F out. That's what you need to be able to do, is when they run an off-ball action to go get Darius on Porzingis, someone like Hunter can tag him out and close, and then they can use all that length to close those cross-court passes for open threes that otherwise they can't close out. Yeah. They can, and then once you get Wade or Hunter on Porzingis, yeah, he's still a really good post scorer. Yeah, every now and again he's gonna kill you, but like there are certain things with a team as good as Boston that you just have to accept might happen defensively, which is, by the way, why I remain most worried about our offense, because I think we can control that better. But like those are the kinds of sacrifices I'm willing to live with. I'm not really willing to live with Darius Garland in a post up on an island against Kristaps Porzingis. No. And by the way, neither is Kenny Atkinson, because they've had to put 2 on the ball. And 2 on the ball against Boston is death.
Yep. I totally agree. Like that's the one spot where I don't think you can just guard them straight up, right? Like everywhere else, I am fine with guarding them straight up. And like when Tatum gets onto Garland, it reminds me a lot of when the Spurs put Boris Diaw on LeBron, where it's like, all right, this is going to bait him into his worst habits. He is going to take a pull-up jumper, a mid-range jumper every single time, and we're going to live with that. If he decides to go to the rim, which this is the same thing with Tatum and Garland, when he goes to the rim, we are going to have help defenders there. We're going to have Evan Mobley and Jared Allen, just like they had Tim Duncan and Thiago Splitter out there, able to, disrupt some of those shots at the rim. The Porzingis thing, that's going to be interesting. I'm going to be really, really interested to see who ends up on him, how they're able to tag out and get length there. DeAndre Hunter and Dean Wade, I think, can both. Like, I will live with Porzingis shooting over DeAndre Hunter or Dean Wade, even if he's hitting those shots. That is almost every single player on the Boston Celtics, if they are shooting over a Cavs defender and you're not bringing to the ball and you're not giving up these wide open looks and opportunities, I will live with that. The one exception is Porzingis on Garland or on Mitchell or on Ty Jerome or on Sam Merrill.
He's just not getting contested at that point. He's just not. No,
that is like the extreme example of where I'm like, I hate the whole shoot over guys kind of talking.
Well, he's 7'3".
No, that guy is massive. When it's a foot difference, it's a difference.
Can we talk about the other side of the ball? Because that's where I remain the most focused. It's where the Cavs have had the biggest drop off. They have a 122.1 offensive rating on the season. They're like 113.8 against Boston. They are not losing these games on the defensive end of the floor. They are losing them on the offensive end of the floor when they've lost. Yeah. And I don't know it's not like the Cavs don't face other teams who are pretty good at switching or that are physical or have good guards that can guard up. Like, other teams can do that. What is the difference with the Celtics team that makes it so hard for them to get their offense off? Because it feels like even on the games they've scored well, it's been Donovan's playing really well and scoring really well. It doesn't feel like they've been able to engage the Cavaliers' death machine on offense against Boston so far.
No, I don't know if it's ever going to feel that way, just because Boston's able to keep pace, in most matchups. I think what has felt kind of the most consistent in the 3 matchups against Boston this season is that it has taken them a quarter to get going.
That's fair.
And they press and they rush it. And whether it's the matchup, whether it's, that the games have been nationally televised, and knowing that there's a focus on it, whatever kind of the cause is, they are taking themselves out of how they traditionally play. I think everyone is so excited to kind of make the play that they are just getting out of their game a little bit. And that's one of those spots where,
feels like every jumper is rushed and
yes.
and stressful for the offensive player.
And they get, consistently good looks. Like they are going to get, wide open shot attempts versus Boston. I'm not too worried about that. Boston gives up a lot of those, particularly since Kristaps Porzingis has come back and they play a little differently defensively than they do with Al Horford. I just think it's going to come down to, do they play under control? I think if they play under control and the results are similar, like, Evan Mobley's not forcing it at the rim against Porzingis and Al Horford. Garland is getting to his floater rather than trying to get all the way to the rim, which, I think sometimes he's tried to do a little bit too much inside the paint. If the process is better, I care about that more than the results, as much as I really deeply want to see the results validate that process. I want to see, do we approach this game with a little more maturity than we did in those other games? Because I feel like in those other games, once the Cavs have settled in, they have managed to score well. They have managed to come back and win a game. They have managed to come back and contest the other ones, right? Where it is within 5 points in the last 5 minutes, right? They have been able to do that in every single one of these matchups. Can they put their best foot forward at the start in a hostile environment, one of the tougher road arenas to go into and win? Are they able to get it done in that setting? Are they able to show that composure? That to me is the number one thing that I'm looking for Friday.
If the Celtics are whole, would this be the best win of the season?
I am going to say OKC was still the best win. The home game against OKC, because OKC has been a better regular season team. I think OKC is still on the kind of cash trajectory of, we have something to prove. Every single game is going to be a statement matchup. I think the Cavs could come out and punch Boston in the mouth, and it wouldn't change how the Celtics feel about themselves going into that series. They've already got their wins against Cleveland this season. If they split the season series, I don't think it means as much to them. And honestly, OKC should probably be the title favorite. If there's a series against Boston, I think that they can get Boston.
I think they would get Boston.
Yeah, I would pick them in a series. I don't believe Boston has beat them this season.
The Cavs are having a historically good year, and OKC by the metrics is a lot better.
Yeah, it's I think that was the best win that we had. It particularly it being at that time where it's okay, can the Cavs get a statement win? So much buildup, a week worth of buildup by the NBA partners. You get all these kind of interviews and all that kind of stuff that could add pressure to that matchup. I just don't think that this Friday game is going to be kind of felt the same way. And our buddy Anthony Lima brought up a terrifying possibility on the radio. I think it was today, where he was saying Joe Mazzulla's a big mind games guy. Wouldn't be surprised if he rests some guys. Don't let the Cavs get the tape, take some air out of this matchup.
Oh, that would be infuriating.
I'm going to be resentful if they're not,
I'm going to blame Lima.
Healthy. I'm going to blame him too. You know what? And we know that he is a listener and supporter of this here podcast, and we love you, Tony. But I'm going to blame you for speaking that in existence if it does occur.
Yeah, that would be disgusting and unethical, and couldn't possibly be me. It's I will say that the Thunder game probably is the best win of the season. I think this would be the most important win of the season, because right now, right this very second, I still probably would pick Boston in a series. I think I haven't seen us solve the problems they pose for us consistently enough. If they go out and Boston goes out fully healthy in the Garden and we show something, we put up a 125 offensive rating, I do think there is that's meaningful to me to see the offensive engine get going. So I think it could be our most important game of the season, kind of one way or the other. Because if they come out and put up another, they fall down 14 and get it back to 4 and ultimately lose again, I think we're past moral victory season with Boston.
Yeah.
I think they got to go win. They got to go show that they have solved the problems that this Boston team poses for them, or at least have solutions for them. I think that's probably a better framing than solved, because you don't really solve a team this good.
No,
ever.
No, it's going to come down to execution. You play the series over 10 times, you might get different results every single time.
The live chat is booing me right now for saying that. I'm in trouble.
Good. I was going to say there's two things that I would want to add to what you said, and the first I think is just an honest assessment of who I am as a person. Even though I've said there's nothing the Cavs can do to make themselves the favorite in that series, if I'm being honest with myself, if we were doing a series preview, if I feel there's even a 10% chance the Cavs are going to win the series, I'm going to pick them in that series.
This is the most unfair thing about our podcast dynamic, because if I think there's
right and you're wrong,
if I think there's a 45% chance the Cavs will win, I would pick the other team. And if you think there's a 45% chance, because I'm just literally saying what I think is most likely to happen, I'm being an honest, objective statistician, and you're sitting here, playing to the crowd and
never show me the odds.
And literally saying that you think that they have a 10% chance of winning, and yet you get the bonus points for picking the Cavs. This is sickening.
Look behind me, Carter. There's a little plaque
I'm getting destroyed right now. This live chat's horrible for me.
There's a little plaque right behind me. It has a piece of the floor when the Cavs came back from down 3-1. Don't tell me the odds. Don't tell me that the Cavs can't overcome the percentages, the odds.
I didn't.
I didn't tell you that.
You
are. I have faith. I have belief. I bleed wine and gold here, man. This is what I do. I also have a caveat for you where I will change my mind and say that this is the most important win. If we go into this game and Evan Mobley looks like the best player on the court, if Evan Mobley comes out and he has, a 28-10 or a 28-15-8 game against the Boston Celtics, I will say that this is the most important win, because I still firmly believe Evan Mobley, how far he is able to elevate himself, is going to dictate how far this team can go. How far whether or not they can win a championship, Evan Mobley needs to be at that level. As much as I want to see Darius and Donovan play well, I know that they are capable of it. I know they're also capable of struggling in the matchup against two elite defensive guards. Evan Mobley needs to be that game breaker. So if he comes out and he looks like he did against the Knicks, where he looked like the best player on the court, that is going to be a very meaningful thing for me. And I will amend my stance. I will say, though, he did have 21, 10, and 7 in that game against OKC. It was pretty goddamn good.
It was pretty good. But again, I just think Boston there's some, Jordan against the bad boy Pistons.
Yep.
These
humps you have to come
Pistons
overcome,
against
right?
the Showtime Lakers. Like,
Pistons against LeBron early on.
Yeah, there are certain teams that just, they've got they think they own you.
Yep.
I think this Boston team has no fear of this Cavs team.
No.
And I want the Cavs to put that fear into them at the end of the day. And that's why this game, I think, matters so much.
Yeah. And it's, that's really like what's on the line, right? It's the opportunity, the final opportunity of this season to play a contender. All due respect to the New York Knicks and some of the other teams that are kind of on that bubble that, can potentially win any series. But when it comes to the true blue contenders, this is the last matchup that we have against one. We do not play OKC again this year.
Yeah.
It's really, really going to be an interesting game. We're going to be able to learn more from the rest of the regular season, but this is our last chance to play Boston. And, whether or not we get the 1 seed,
fully rested, by the way. Come on, this is it's the time is now, bro. This is the time to make that statement. The last big statement.
Here's the thing. Like, the 1 seed isn't up in the air anymore.
No.
Like, it's, I believe Boston lost tonight. Is that correct?
They did.
Okay. So with that loss, if the Cavs go 500 the rest of the way, I think Boston would have to go like 18-5 to tie. If the Cavs went 18-6, if the Cavs went 18-6, which is, worse than their season-long pace, Boston could not catch them if they go undefeated.
Yep.
The 1 seed is not up for grabs here, man. Like, that is
barring something absolutely disastrous.
Yes.
And perfect play out of Boston.
Yeah, it's just too hard of a hill to climb. It was funny to see, we came out of the All-Star break with, I think, the 14th toughest strength of schedule. And then after that weekend where we smoked the Knicks and got that win against Memphis, it dropped all the way down to 21st. I haven't seen where it went after
the
Magic game.
We're up to 19 now.
Okay, so 19th, like, it's already fallen off a whole lot. So I'm really, really looking forward to this game. I'm hoping that Darius is going to play. I think, the signs are at least positive in that direction. And, let's hope that there's no Joe Mazzulla mind games here.
Oh, man, I hope not. I mean, I'm too hyped. One thing that plays in our favor is it's a national TV game. So the league does care about that kind of stuff. What a run. I don't know if we ever had this many national games in a row in the LeBron era, bro. This is bananas.
And we keep handling a lot of them.
And we just got another one. Games. They just flexed the Sunday night against in Milwaukee up to ESPN.
Yeah.
It's like 7 out of 9 games.
Milwaukee's not a true blue contender, but anytime you're playing Giannis and Dame, that's going to be a fun one as well. But the Cavs have done such a good job in these national TV games so far this year. And I feel like all the Friday ones that we've really anticipated, I think Lakers, Warriors, some of the other ones that we've had this season have all kind of turned out. They've all turned out to be these really comfortable wins for the Cavs. And I hate it because when it happens on a Friday, the NBA national podcasters get to ignore it. And I really don't want that to be the case, but I will live with them ignoring it if it means the Cavs get a win on Friday, because unlike you, Carter, I'm here rooting for the Cleveland Cavaliers.
I hate you.
I hate you too, buddy, but I love our listeners. Thanks to everyone tuning in on YouTube for putting Carter in his place. He really needs that from time to time again. Appreciate you guys hanging out with us. Make sure you like and subscribe. Click that notification bell so you know when we're going live. If you're listening via podcast and you want to support us, leave us a rating, leave a review, subscribe, unsubscribe, resubscribe, and help cook those books. If you want to be part of Chase Down's exclusive Discord chat, send a screenshot of the review to chasedownpod@gmail.com. However you choose to support us, we really do appreciate it. Make sure you guys are staying safe out there. Until next time, go Cavs.